All right, I'm excited for you to meet Garrett Batty, a Latter-day Saint filmmaker who has produced the movie Faith of Angels. It comes out September 12th in Utah and September 26th nationwide. He's very talented, and this is an opportunity for you to support Latter-day Saint filmmakers. Garrett is also a friend of mine, and as an official spokesperson for Going to Travel, I need to say he was on the Momentum Cruise with me, both the East and the West, earlier this year. The Momentum Cruises are happening again next year, 2025. There is a Momentum West Cruise from January 4th to 11th and a Momentum East Cruise from February 8th to 11th. This is a great opportunity for you to be with hundreds of other Latter-day Saints, see great entertainment, and listen to edified messages. Go to cwicmedia.com, go to the top at trips and events, and then scroll down to Momentum Cruises. Here we go.
Dad, do you think we could go into the mine now?
Can you imagine walking around in this with no light?
Can't even see the opening anymore.
Hello? Can anyone hear me?
It's been nearly 24 hours since 10-year-old Joshua Dennis was last seen.
Joshua! All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, we've brought on filmmaker Garrett Batty, who's got a new film coming out this September called Faith of Angels, which I've seen twice. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Greg. Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I really want to talk about this movie. It's a fascinating story. It's based on a true story that happened in Utah about, and some people might remember this, about the young boy who was stuck in the mine. They couldn't find him for several days. What brought you to make this movie? Why did you have the idea that I need to bring this to film?
Yeah, it's a good question and one that I love talking about. I was unaware of the story, despite it being mentioned several times in general conference throughout the years. You know, this happened in 1989, and here we are 35 years later. I had been working as a director for the church's Book of Mormon series, and some of the producers reached out to me after that or during that process and said one of the extras in that series proposed to them the idea of telling this story as a movie. And they said, wonderful, sounds like a great idea. It's something they don't do, but I was fortunate enough that they reached out to me and said, is this a story you'd like to tell? And I do get a lot of inquiries of that nature, saying, hey, here's a story, would you like to tell this? But the one thing that stood out to me in this particular incident was that there were some sort of angelic inspirations or angels involved. And that immediately drew me to it as a filmmaker and a storyteller. I thought, that's a story I want to tell.
So you went up to the town. What is the name of the town?
The town that this took place in is Ophir.
Ophir.
Okay. Yeah, it's about 39 people live there, and just this beautiful, quiet little town outside of Tooele.
It's like, is it Ophir, right?
Ophir, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a small town in Utah where this happens. So you went up and did a little research on this, right?
We did. Yep. As soon as we got the idea for the story, and I wanted to figure out what it was going to be, where it was going to go. And before writing the script, I kind of go and try to get a sense of the vibe of the town or the feel of the place. And yeah, as we explored Ophir, we immediately were approached by residents of the town who wanted to know what we were doing there. And I explained to them, I'm looking at telling this story. And they referred me to one of the individuals who played a key part in this story, in the actual event. And so, again, every step of the way, we felt kind of led and kind of directed as to who to talk to and how to proceed.
So give an overall view of what the story is. I mean, what is the story? You talk about the angels that are involved in this that piqued your interest, but what is the overall story here? I remember I didn't live in Utah for very long, but I was in Utah when this happened.
Oh, is that right?
So I remember the news story coming out, but what is the overall story here?
Yeah. So essentially back in September 1989, a stranger, John Skinner, is up in Montana fishing, and he receives this mysterious prompting to drive to Utah. He doesn't know why or doesn't know what for. He's from Utah, originally in Utah, but he was up in Montana for this 3-week solo getaway vacation, and packs up early, drives to Utah, arrives home, and he finds out or discovers that there is a young boy that has been missing in an abandoned mine, and people have been unable to find him. John just so happens to be a historian in that area and has familiarity with the mines, and he feels compelled and prompted and driven to help, almost called to help. And he makes his way up to the mine, and so we've got John that's got these angelic or promptings to help. We have a boy that's missing. We're assuming lost in the mine. And
how old is he?
He's 10. He's 11. His name is Joshua Dennis, 11-year-old kid lost in the mine. He was up there with kind of a fathers and sons group, and just got separated from the group, and they couldn't find him. And then it's compounded by the authorities have had experiences like this in the past, where kids have gone missing, or it's a dangerous area. This mine is very dangerous and treacherous, and the authorities need to proceed with extreme caution in searching for this lost individual, this lost boy. And so John, the person who feels compelled and called to support and almost lead this effort, is kept out of the mine because of authorities and because of the dangers. So the movie tells that story of what happens and how John deals with, and how we all kind of deal with these promptings of feeling to act, the sense of being called, the sense of a greater purpose, and yet the obstacles that oftentimes come in the way of that.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, we do all feel that. We have those inspirations. It's like, am I really hearing something? Is this really something I should do? And you can see how in his mind, where these experts are going through, they can't find him. Why would John be able to find them? And, how you would start to doubt yourself, right? It's like, I'm going to doubt myself. I'm going to doubt what this inspiration is, because it doesn't seem like I'm really, this is just, must be something that is a mistake, right? It's just in my head.
Sure. We all go through that. And whether it's this self-doubt or, the odds are stacked against John in this situation, and oftentimes in all of us, where it just doesn't make sense. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days go by, they're unable to find a boy. People can't survive without food and water in those circumstances. And so even the logic is against John and against the situation. And yet still he's having these promptings to go and help them see is what he's, the promptings.
There's a couple of other places in the film where you bring in these angels. One of them is John comes, he's looking around at another entrance. I think that's when he finds it. He goes to another entrance of the mine, and he's looking around, and in the movie, at least, he finds a little statuette, I believe it is, and it's an angel. Is that part of the movie, or is that actually part of the story? Is that real?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
And it was fascinating. When I went up to Ophir to scout out the location and look at this, I met with John in his home, and John showed me, he told me the story completely and his experience and his point of view of it. I've also met with Joshua's family and heard their experience. But yes, John showed me the collection of things that he had found. He had found an actual little angel statue at the time of searching for Josh, at this time where hope is lost, and how can I go back, and am I making a fool of myself offering this help, and feeling this at this low point. He finds in the dirt this little angel statue that reinforced to his mind that he was being guided and watched over, and he should continue to try to be involved in this effort.
So it's like a little sign that of a confirmation for him, right? It's like, okay, these are real. These feelings are real, and I shouldn't doubt them. Maybe, yeah.
He took it as such, yes.
Okay, and then later on, well, not later on, but also in the film, you've got the young boy, right? Which is It's Joshua, right?
Josh
is the young
Dennis,
boy.
yes.
Yeah. So Josh is in the mine, and he describes that he sees angels. Isn't that correct?
So Josh describes, and speaking, I guess it's not a spoiler, speaking with Josh years and years after the event, he talks about there were two instances that he could feel. Well, let's see. There were two instances that came to his mind specifically that we portray in the movie. But he said the entire time he could feel angels with him. He did not see angels, but he says, I wasn't ever scared because there were angels with me. And he actually reported that to the news, and that was his statement throughout this thing. He thought he had been missing for about a day, and he said, there were angels with me. And so we use techniques to try to show what Josh may have been feeling during that time.
Yeah. And wasn't there some significance as to who was playing the angels?
Yeah, I think so. As the filmmaker and storyteller, I thought, okay, well, how do we do this? And who are the angels in my life? When I think of experiences where perhaps hope has been lost or trials have had to be overcome, I think who has the most interest in me succeeding in that? And it occurred to me, and throughout interviewing Josh and John and their families, and even the way that this story came into my life, that I think that there's a reason to believe that those angels that are with us could certainly be past descendants. And so we hint at that in the movie, and that's not a spoiler at all, but certainly a thought-provoking idea that both John Skinner, his great-great-great-grandfather, was the mine superintendent of this particular mine. Josh and his family talk about experiencing angels with each of their siblings and so forth. And so, we hint, or we suggest, that those angels might be familiar to Josh and John that are now helping them.
Okay. There's another conflict in the movie where you have the experts are looking at a specific map that they have, and they're going through, and they've looked in every spot, right? They've gone through, they've looked everywhere they can think of. And obviously it's pitch black in there as they go in, but they cannot find him, which means they can't hear him either. Right. So they're going through, they're looking at this, but John, I believe, doesn't he have a different map with him?
It's interesting. The maps that they used in both in the story and in the film were maps that John Skinner had sketched out previous to this event even happening. John lives in for now. He lived near the mine at the time, and was essentially just a historian and a big fan of the mines. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I'm going to get a little sip of water. So he often would go in and search or play in the mines as a boy. So yes, the maps that they used in the movie were his sketches that he provided to the searchers at the time. And John's request was also that they just feel like it's not necessarily about the maps, but it's going down and feeling and paying attention to what is being felt in the darkness. And that was
Sixth Sense.
That was Sixth Sense a little bit, and that was beyond what the searchers understood or wanted to understand. Rightfully so. Hey, we're down here. There's a boy missing. Let's go through the method and proven way to find him. We're going to walk and shine our flashlights. We'll yell for him, and every 8 feet we'll hang a ribbon and then move on. And they did that, and they covered 22 miles of mine doing that.
Wow.
And
it's that large.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are shafts.
22 miles.
22 miles of shafts. Yeah.
That is incredible.
The rescuers say that they can do that in about a day and a half. They say, look, 22 miles, that'll take us about a day and a half to be pretty thorough. And so after a day and a half, say, okay, well, let's do it again in reverse or whatever. Let's do it again. They brought in the search dogs, brought in everything, and could not find this boy, but he could hear them. They could not hear him.
Okay, so he heard them, but they couldn't hear him. And I'm guessing after a while, he's not able to speak much. He's not able to get much of a yell out, for so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and Josh talks about that. It was that just feeling totally, certainly dehydrated and a little bit hypothermic. And
what time of year? This was in September?
This was September, and they say that it should be about the same temperature in the mine throughout the year. It's usually about 55 degrees, pretty consistent temperature.
So it's not freezing, but it's cold.
It's cold. He's got a jacket and a pair of jeans, and he was cold, but not. I think when he came out, there was a little bit of frostbite that they had to treat.
Okay.
They had to treat.
There's another character in the movie who is the sheriff, who is he's a little almost adversarial in the search, right? He's holding people off. He's part of the reason John Skinner is not allowed into the mine. He seems to want to give up early, saying, and you could give some reason to this, right? I mean, if they've gone through that 22 miles a couple times and they haven't found anything, and how long can an 11-year-old boy live? Food is one thing, but water is completely different, right? And so maybe he's that's what I liked about the film, is that I started to give up.
Sure.
Right. I'm giving up because it's so long, and I know there's probably light at the end of the tunnel, no pun intended here, but it's, there is just an obvious sense of doom and
sure.
and loss and wanting to give up.
As I researched the story, that is exactly the sentiment that I felt was, it just doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense that they would continue looking, and I start to relate to the sheriff. The sheriff is played by an incredible actor named Cameron Arnett, who is in a lot of faith-based films and just does an amazing job. And when we talked about the role and the purpose of the character in this film, that was the realization, is that he had to represent sort of the logic behind all of this. And that is that in his experience, and in any experience, it is certainly understandable that, one, there's a boy at risk, and going in to search for him increases that risk for people. And so he's got to protect and make sure that everybody is safe. And then two, kind of the timetable, and saying, look, after 2 or 3 days, it shifts from a rescue to a recovery. Mm-hmm. And, 3 or 4 or 5 days into this, it's sort of maybe risking a lot more than potentially receiving. Mm-hmm. And so it was a difficult role for him to be able to balance that. But I think Cameron Arnett does a great job of it.
So it's putting in play a dynamic really of logic versus inspiration, right? And John obviously represents that inspiration and overcoming the logic, right? I mean, and all of us want to rely on logic, but there is something else. And
Sure.
And that's kind of what the film shows.
There's a scene that is a kind of a dialogue between the two lead characters, John Skinner and the sheriff. And they're asking about, look, is this faith? He says, you don't run something this important on faith. And both characters have correct perspectives on that in their own way and from their own backgrounds. But that is essentially a theme of the movie. Is there's this faith versus logic, and hey, I might even be called to do something and it doesn't make sense. I'm not qualified, and yet I'm the one that's been called.
So I'm not going to go too much more into this because I don't want to go into spoiling some of these things. But give me an idea then of. I'm always fascinated with this one. I love watching movies, and obviously what we see is the end product. It's like reading a book on history, where there's so much more behind it, and we're just getting what the author is giving us, right? So we're getting what you have put together, you've written, you directed, you produced this. And what does it take to put together a film like this? What do you start with? I'm guessing the story. How do you put this together?
Sure. It's a good question. It's been a long journey. This will be a 3-year journey so far, and before this movie hits the screens, from the time that I initially received that phone call. And it starts with research and saying, look, is this a story that's worth telling, and what is the message that I hear from this story, and would that resonate with an audience? And so I do a lot of interviews and research with the individuals that were involved in the story, and try to do my best to build a storyline that interweaves all of their perspectives, because so-and-so says this is what happened, but they weren't here at this time. And so I built a great big timeline saying, here are all the characters, here are the 10 characters in the movie who we're going to follow. Here's where they were on day 1, day 2, day 10, or whatever it is. And then see which strong story points I think come out, and try to tie those together. And then it's building a team. Once we have a script and have a little bit of money raised for it, then we build the team and start to cast and reach out. With this film, we were fortunate to cast John Michael Finley as the lead. He plays John Skinner. A lot of you will recognize John Michael Finley from I Can Only Imagine. He's just a wonderful movie, and John's an incredible, talented actor. And then Cameron Arnett plays our sheriff. So those are our 2 leads. And then on that, we've also we were fortunate to cast a lot of wonderful, well-known LDS actors like Kirby Hayborn and Jason Wade, and Ben Lomu, so we just kind of stacked the cast that way. And then we break it down. We filmed in Ophir for, what was it, 18 days, 18 or 19 days.
How do you set that up? I mean, are you going chronological with it, or is it the set and the area and everything that's going to happen in that area you put together? Yep,
exactly that way. With this film, it's shot out of sequence. We had Cameron Arnett for a week with us, but he appears throughout the entire film. So we'd shoot all his scenes, outside the mine, and then out by his car, and shoot all those as much as we could. And then he gets to go home, and we bring in the other actors and shoot everything that takes place in the mine. We're there for a few days, and then at the ground zero type, police area and so forth. So it's based on location. And our first AD, Matt Schramer, builds a schedule based on set and need, and we stick to that play and get it all done in as few days as possible.
Okay. There's a reveal here. Can I reveal about the son, Joshua?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a certain actor that plays the lost boy, right? Who's listed as Michael Bradford in the show.
Yes.
And this was a big reveal when you actually premiered this and we saw this. But tell us a little bit about casting Michael Bradford.
So we knew we needed a talented kid that could portray this 11-year-old boy. And we submitted a lot of tapes. Our casting director is named Jeff. Casting director is Jeff Johnson, who's one of the best casting directors in the state. He casts Yellowstone and Kevin Costner and Taylor Sheridan's work. And so he looks at all the tapes and he knows everybody comes in. At any rate, he looked at all the tapes and submitted the top 3 to me. And one of them was my son, who had submitted a tape. And Jeff Johnson said, hey, you got to look at these kids. And I had to confess to Jeff that I knew one of them. And Jeff said, look, if you don't, he's excellent. And if you don't hire him, you're making the wrong movie. And so
when the tape was submitted, was it under the name Michael Bradford?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Michael Batty is my son, who plays Josh Dennis in the movie. Yeah. But he submitted under a different name and said, he told me, he said, Dad, I'd love to do the movie, but I don't want to do it because I don't want to be hired as the director's kid. I want to do it because I've earned the part. And when you watch the movie, and this was so fun, even on set, he would come on set as Michael Bradford and all the talent and cast. And we got professional actors that are working with him. And when they would slowly learn that he's the director's son. They were just blown away, like, oh, wow. So he does a great job, and it's fun for people to learn that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. All right, so before we get to talking about the release of this, you also, did you write, produce, direct Saratov Approach?
Yes.
Okay, I bring that up because I've seen that. Absolutely love that movie. I'm sure a lot of the audience has seen that movie as well. And how long ago was that? Did you say 12 years ago?
Yeah, we filmed that in 2012. We released it in 2013, and we've been fortunate. Yeah, people responded very well to that film. That's the two missionaries in Russia that get abducted, and I can't believe it's already been over 10 years since that movie premiered.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, so Garrett, thanks so much for coming on here. Tell us a little when this is going to be released and where it's going to be released.
Awesome. So we are releasing the movie. The Faith of Angels opens in Utah on September 12th, and then nationwide September 26th. And what we've done is we want to make sure that we open it in theaters that people want to go see it in. We don't want to just open it to empty screens. And so we're encouraging anybody who would like to see it to go to our website, which is faith-of-angels.com. And you can request your theater. You can put your name, your email, and your zip code, and a little pin will pop up on the map, and we can see the map, and it's on the website. So you can see the more pins that are around your area, the more likely we are able to bring the movie to that theater.
Great. Well, we'll put that link in the description box so that everybody's got it. So
that'll be good.
Garrett, it's great to see you again. Really appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to go see this again. So.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll have you back again. Appreciate it.